Hey everybody, this is Bill Varney from fishthesurf.com with a new surf bait that I picked up that I wanted to show you how it works, how to rig it, how to fish it in the surf. So several years ago when bloodworms became very expensive, lugworms were created and they mostly came from Korea. Now they almost all come from China, and one of the companies that provides them, Online Bait Express, came out with a new bait, which is this one, which are freeze-dried lugworms. So this is the second iteration I've seen of this bait in the past. About 8 years ago, another company came out with not only lugworms, but freeze-dried bloodworms. And the problem with those was that they were so dry, they were almost like ash, and they would crush and fall apart, not stay well on the hook. You'd cast and they'd fly off. Well, these are completely different. I'm not sure exactly what they do. It's got to be some type of secret, trade secret, of course. But I think what probably happens is that they use live lugworms and then they slowly dehydrate them. So not only do they keep their shape, their strength, they stay on the hook really well, but they keep all of that goodness in them that attracts fish. So these are available on my site, surffishtackle.com. You'll also find them on onlinebaitexpress.com, where you can also buy live lugworms and live bloodworms to be sent right to you. So let's take a couple of minutes while I show you how to use these in the surf. In other words, how to rehydrate them if you're going to do that, how to rig them, and how to fish them in the surf. So one of the great things about these dried lugworms is that they are really useful at the beach and the bay and the harbor, really anywhere from shore that you fish. They work great there. They're really easy to use. There's no refrigeration needed. There's no juice in the pack. There's no juice to spill on yourself or in your car whatsoever. You don't have to worry about them drying out. They can be stored in any dry place, like your tackle box, the trunk of your car. They really literally last forever because they're freeze-dried, and they're great to take on trips with you, whether you're going to Hawaii or I was recently down in Cedros, Mexico, where they work great. Anywhere that you travel, this is a great bait to take because it's sealed, it's perfectly dry, and it's very, very light. For a limited time, we're going to offer these at $8 for a package of 12. And if you get 3 packs or more, you get free shipping with that also. So that's a fantastic bait for the surf, bays, and harbor. Really great bait. So the first thing that we need to talk about is our rigging in the surf. And one of the most popular rigs in the surf is the Carolina rig, a very simple rig. And the Carolina rig is made up of a sliding egg sinker. That sinker could be anywhere between 1/8 of an ounce and 1 ounce. The bigger the surf, the heavier the sinker. So if I go down the beach and it's windy or the surf's big, I could fish all the way up to 1 ounce sliding egg sinker. If I go down to the beach and the surf is really small, I'm going to fish maybe something around 1/4 ounce to 1/2 ounce sliding sinker. So bigger the surf, the heavier the sinker, smaller the surf, smaller the current, the lighter the sinker. Then between the sinker and the swivel, I use a 6mm bead. I use this bead to keep the swivel from pounding sand into the egg sinker, which would make it bind on my line. That's a 6mm bead. I use a colored bead in the winter, and then I use a clear bead in the summer. The reason I use a summer clear bead is because Corbina have very good eyesight, and if they see a colored bead down there, they probably won't go for your bait. So summertime, I'm going to use a clear bead. Wintertime, a colored bead, because perch, especially big ones, are attracted to bright colors like that. And then right below that, I'm going to use a black swivel, barrel swivel. That's going to be size 10, 12, or 14 being the very smallest. And then connected to that, I have my 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. And then your leader, same rules apply as they did for Big Surf for the sinker. The bigger the surf, the shorter your leader. The smaller the surf, the longer your leader. Also, if you're fishing around rock structure, you always want to shorten up your leader. So once again, bigger the surf, the shorter your leader. You want your bait to remain on the bottom where surf fish feed. The smaller the surf, the longer you can go on your leader. So in big surf, I'm going to use about a 10-inch leader, maybe 12 inches. And then in smaller surf, I'm going to use anything between 18 and 32-inch leader. And then on the end of my leader, and most importantly, is a very sharp hook. So this hook is a Gamakatsu split shot drop shot hook, size 4. That's a great hook to use in the surf for these worms. And then another good hook to use here is the Sproat hook, the Mustad Sproat hook. That could be in a size 2 or a size 4 that you can use for these worms also. Here's a look at a couple other hooks I like to use. I like to use these Gamakatsu light wire worm hooks. You'll notice with all my hooks that they're a perfect J shape. There's no offset from the tip of the hook to the eye of the hook. The reason for that is you want a perfect J shape. If you don't have that, your bait will be twisted on your hook, so as you retrieve it through the surf, it will spin in the surf, and you don't want that. So you want a perfect J shape. So the Gamakatsu 49409, the light wire worm hook, that works really good. The 50408, the split shot drop shot Gamakatsu hook, that works great. And then of course the mosquito light hooks in a size 4 also work great for these baits too. All three of these are very thin wire and very, very sharp, which is really important in the surf. Now you can fish these baits both dry, put them on your hook dry, or soak them first and put them on wet. I'm going to show you both ways of doing that. So first of all, if we're using the smaller hook here, I'm going to take a worm or a piece of worm like this. So I can easily take a worm out of the package and then break off a section of the worm like this. And I'm going to take my hook, the sharp end obviously of my hook, and put it in that area that I've just broken off right in the middle of it. And then my goal with this dry bait is to push it up as far as I can onto the hook and then punch the hook out the side, just like that. Very, very simple. And then I'm going to pull it up on the eye of my hook, and then what will happen is when that bait hits the water, it will immediately soak up water, triple or quadruple in size, and stay on my hook. These are very, very stable baits for fishing in the surf. They won't fly off your hook when you cast them, and many times when you catch a fish, you might catch 2, 3, 4 fish on the same bait. Another hook that I like to use that seems to make it a little bit easier than these smaller hooks is the Sproat hook or the Gamakatsu worm hook. So here's an example of the Sproat hook. This is a little bit bigger size one, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to take the worm, I'm going to go in through the area I ripped off the top, I'm going to go down the middle of the worm here, the best that I can, as I try to push it up on my hook. A little bit easier, as you'll see in a minute when they're wet. And then I'm going to punch my hook out through the side, and once again, there you have it. You want to have your bait as straight as possible on your hook. Of course, this is going to get wet, and that's going to straighten out. You want to have it as straight as possible on your hook. That keeps it from spinning. And also, the amount that you leave below the hook, you want that 2 inches or less. If you make it much longer than that, they'll always short bite you and bite it off below your hook. So that's a look at the baits when they're dry and they're put on the hook. And then here's a look at the baits when they're wet. Now, one thing about these baits is you can soak them for really just a few minutes and they will fatten up, plump up. Or you can even take these baits and soak them overnight in a little bit of milk, and they'll basically double in size. So let's take them out of the water here. And once again, they are realistic. They look realistic. These are real lugworms that were dehydrated. And so if we were to take the shorter of the two hooks, of the two worms, move these other guys out of the way for the time being. And we would do exactly the same thing. We would take a worm, we would put it right in the area that we broke it off from the larger worm. We would feed it up the hook. And as you can see, once it's wet, it's much, much easier to feed up the hook, although you can do it both ways. I'll pull it up over the eye, even onto my line a little bit, and there it is on your hook. One of the great things about these lugworms is that you can completely expose the hook, being black, outside of the lugworm itself, and it still works great in the surf. If I was to take the larger hook, so this is the long shank mustad or Gamakatsu worm hook, I would then be able to use the entire worm if I chose to do that. So this would be the mouth, and of course the skinny part at the end here is the tail. And I'm going to take this long shank hook, I'm going to put it right down its mouth, and there's a little hard spot inside of its mouth there. You're going to have to poke past that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just rip the top end of these dry worms off like this to make it a little bit easier for us to get down to where that part of the worm is. Below the inside, there's like a hard bone or something inside there. And then we'll just begin to feed it right up the hook. It goes really, when it's wet like this, it just slides right up there. It's great. And you try to get it down as best you can, down the middle of that worm. And what I do is I keep pushing it up the hook as much as I can. Once again, I want to try to leave, if I can, like 1 to 2 inches below the hook. And then I grab it like this and I actually pull it up over the eye onto my line, which once again is going to pull the worm up even more. Just like this. A little bit more of my line like that. And I've almost completely exposed my hook again there. You can see I've got about 1 to 2 inches below there for them to bite. And the reason we use the whole worm like this, these dried worms, is because if I do that and I get that little section bit off, or I catch a fish and I lose the little bottom section, I can pull this down from my line, put another 2 inches down there, I'm ready to go. I don't need to bait up right away. So a bait like this, I might be able to catch 3 or 4 fish just on this one bait. It really works great. Very easy to use. They stay on the hook. And as I said, many times when you catch a fish, it may still leave a good portion of the worm right on the hook because they're really so stable. So that's how we hook these baits. They're very, very simple to hook. They work great as bait out there from the beach, from the shore, in the bay, harbor, down at the beach. As I said, when you travel, all of those different places, they work great. One more thing I want to say too is that if you want a free pack of worms, we just ask you to join our movement, Respect the Beach, and get a free pack of worms sent to you. All you need to do is just pick up some trash on the beach, take a picture of the trash, post it on Facebook and Instagram with the hashtag OnlineBaitExpress and fishthesurf.com, and we'll contact you and we'll mail you a free pack of lugworms. So that's how we rig the lugworms and use them in the surf. They're very effective. I've caught all different types of fish on these. Perch, corbina, yellowfin croaker. Haven't caught a spotfin croaker yet, but I did take these down to Cedros Island with me a few weeks ago, and they worked incredibly from the beach. Caught sand bass, calico bass, spotted bay bass or cabiria down there, sculpin, wrasse, all kinds of fish right from the beach because they work so well. If you'd like to pick up a pack of these or several packs of them, you can find them at surffishtackle.com, and you can also find them in a bigger selection of live baits at onlinebaitexpress.com. Thank you so much for watching.